while you got your cell phones out as well, I know you all got title companies, I know you're all loved, but again, if you haven't been on the phone with your title company at 1 in the morning, if they're not writing documents for you and writing up contracts for you while they're on the beach in Galveston with their family, I'm not promising you're going to do that. I talked to Sean on Christmas Day. I mean, all kinds of stuff. He never ceases to amaze me with his customer service. So scan this. If you got a title company, keep them. If you need a miracle worker, call Sean. Scan this code and you'll have them in your phone. Sean. And Kathy. I'm sorry. And Kathy. I didn't call you.
That's okay. I'm going to take over the mic before Sean does anyway.
That's right.
I'm Kathy Capps-Warren with Tiago Title. I'm not Sean, as you can tell. I am a miracle worker, but probably the one that stops him to get you guys some business. Anyway, Kathy Capps-Warren, I am the business development rep for Tiago Title. If you ever need anything, I'm here to grow your business. Sean keeps you out of trouble, as well as your clients, and we're always available to do what we need to do for you to get more business. And 2023 is looking great so far, and it will continue. And I know we are the most exciting part of the day because he's a great instructor.
Contract updates. Yes.
So we're gonna let him take over.
All right. I need to hold this or?
I don't know.
You can click it.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is, by the way, speaking of social media, Joella said she's mid-40s. I mean, I just turned 40 and I just got on Instagram like 3 months ago. Okay. But scan this bad boy right here and you're going to see a lot of videos. I've really started to get better at posting videos. So every week on Instagram, I post 2 or 3, 4 videos answering legal questions, hot topics, anything you can name of. It's usually an agent asks me a question, texts me a question, I'll post a video on. So if you're interested in the Instagram, Facebook, check that out. We also have a Closing with Tiago group. It's a private group on Facebook. So a lot of times what I'll do is create legal guides and legal handouts that a lot of agents will pass on to their clients. It's got my name, attorney, state bar number, so that they can say, hey, okay, if they say, well, what's a homestead legally, not tax-wise, right? What's a homestead? Here's a great little handout from an attorney at Tiago Title, right? And then you just send it over to them. So we put that in our Closing with Tiago group. If you guys want to be part of that, it's on Facebook. And you can see all sorts of information, great information in the Closing with Tiago group. We're doing the Trek updates now, huh?
Trek updates.
You want me to get started?
Let's do it.
All right. Who's excited for some Trek updates?
Come on, y'all.
Come on. Father, let me see if I can tech live. Tony, you might have to help me here. See, I'm not super tech savvy either. Just we're on the same page. When I teach the contract updates class, you can see them. Like, we can't see them on the screen, which is part of the issue right now. But when I teach this class, I've been teaching it a lot lately, but I teach it a little bit differently. A lot of times these instructors will come out just kind of regurgitate what the changes were. What I did was, whenever the Broker Lawyer Committee and Trek was voting on the changes, what I did was pull out the PDFs, right? So it's much easier to see, and you'll see when I can pull one of these up, you'll be able to see the changes, right? So if it's in blue on the form, you can see it. If it's red, it means it was struck, right? So it's just easier to visualize it that way. And whenever we get there, I will start going through them for y'all. There you go. Out there now. All right, perfect. Can y'all see that in the back? Do I need to try to zoom in a little bit? Is that better? I'll scroll down. Y'all see that in the back? Okay. So when I go through this class, when I teach the contract updates class, again, like I said, I'm going to go through the updates themselves, but I'm going to offer a little bit more. I'm going to talk about it, why that's important from a legal perspective, right? The considerations that you guys need to think of, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, because at some point you're going to get asked these questions. I'll read the changes for the most part so that if anybody has trouble seeing in the back, you can see those. So now, right now, we're on paragraph 3, sales price. This is a big one. Some people look at this and go, that's not that significant, right? That's not that important. But take a look at this. I'll read it. The term cash portion of the sales price does not include proceeds from borrowing of any kind or selling other real property except as disclosed in this contract. How many people in here work with investors? How many people know what a hard money loan is? How many people know what a line of credit is? Right? Perfect. Almost every single one of you does, which does not surprise me. In the prior version of the contract, what would happen was a lot of investors, a lot of investors would say, hey, listing agent, well, the buyer, they would submit these offers to you, right? And they'd say that they were cash for $500,000. Then lo and behold, 3 days later, Tiago gets it, and then we get a title request from a hard money lender, right? Well, hard money lenders do similar things to conventional, right? They do appraisals. They conduct inspections. At a minimum, they conduct inspections, right? They may not all conduct an appraisal, but they do conduct inspections. Right? And they do run through underwriting. And so we get these hard money title requests in, right? It's all about full disclosure. And so we turn around to the listing agent and we give them our weekly updates, right? And that's what we do as part of our Tiago. Hey, here's the status. Here's where the lender's at, right? And then the first reaction would be from the listing agent, what do you mean, lender? This is a cash deal. And then we would have to explain that, yes, they put cash on the contract, but it sure as heck is not a cash deal. It's not, right? A hard money loan or private financing from your dad or borrowing off a line of credit or a commercial line of credit, that's not, I guess I need to stand over here a little bit more. That's not cash, right? That's taken out a loan. And so what Struck did, and I completely agree with it, is they added this provision in there. When we get to the third-party financing addendum, you're going to see on the third-party financing addendum that there's also another change there. It's a great change. It's called other financing, right? So it's this catch-all for other types of financing outside of conventional FHA, USDA, VA, right? So this is a big deal because now sellers in particular are not going to be surprised when your close date isn't 3 days, right? Because the hard money lender needs it to be 2 weeks. And that happened all the time. And so we would end up disclosing to the listing agent, hey, there's a lender, this is private financing, or there's an equity loan on here. So this is a really, really good change. So pay attention to that. If you got buyers that are having hard money loans, lines of credit, warehouse lines, anything of that nature, you're gonna pay attention to that, and then you're gonna use the third-party financing, and then you're gonna have an option to choose whether or not it's subject to that hard money loan or not. And you guys feel free to ask any questions at any time if you guys want. Now there are some minor changes. Trek does this a lot, where they'll capitalize something. They have escrow agent and then they capitalize it. I'm not gonna go. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the other section real quick?
Yeah, the cash portion?
Yes.
Sure can.
So if I'm reading that right, what that means is a cash borrower is now like top priority in the pecking order, because so many times you see things come through, like you said, hard money, or whatever. So when someone's truly cash, and then they're gonna send you proof of funds probably, which is gonna show I have that much money in these accounts, then they're all of a sudden are in their own league. And the way that we know that now is because this provision is going to bring clarity to that.
Correct.
So it's not so much, correct?
Correct. I mean, 100%, right? A great way to put it is, it's much more clear. The disclosures there, so they are going to be top of the line, right? And you'll know that too. And as a listing agent, and I'll show you when we get to the third-party financing addendum. The third-party financing addendum again has an other financing section. And when you get to the bottom of the other financing paragraph, you're going to see is subject to approval, paragraph 2B, or is not. So if I'm the listing agent, right, and I get an offer in that's a hard money, private equity type offer. If I'm a listing agent, I'm probably not going to let that be subject to paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum for property approval, right? It'll make a little bit more sense when I show that to you. But yeah, I do agree with you 100%. Cash is king, right? In a hard money loan, line of credit, none of that was ever cash. It was always subject to other conditions. But we see this a lot in our Dallas office, which is pretty close to Highland Park, where you see a lot of mom and dad, which must be not, I've never done that for me, loan money to loan money to their kids to buy a $2 million house in Highland Park, right? That's still a loan. Parents are gonna treat it as a loan. A loan is a loan is a loan, right? It's not cash, okay? Yes, ma'am.
So if that was the case, do you still put it as a cash amount and then check the third-party financing? Because there's not really a down payment, it's like a.
No, I mean, you'll see, you're gonna put it, you're gonna put it under B, right? So if you have B, then it'll make more sense when we can see it. But you'll see, you still have the third-party financing down. So it's never cash anymore. So you're gonna put whatever amount down. In other words, if it's 100% financing, right, whether a hard money loan or mom and dad are loaning the $100,000 to buy the $100,000 house, B is gonna be 100 and C is gonna be 100, right? It's 100% financing, right? But, there might be putting some money down, so you'll treat it just like you do any other financing. Number 5, again, I am not gonna waste my time or yours going through and talking about the changes in capitalization. But what I am going to talk about is the next one that is really, well, we're not quite there yet, but I'm going to show you this one. Number 6, this is 611. So there's a required notices section. As you guys know, several months back, the laws changed in Texas where you now have to provide a disclosure. Okay, for different public improvement districts, water care and improvement districts, municipal utility districts. So if you have one of those districts and you have to disclose it, you're gonna put it on 11, right? So and you still attach it to the contract though. So I wanna be clear, you still attach it to the contract, the disclosure, but reference it here, okay? Reference it under 11. Well, you might be thinking, how do I know if a property's in a public improvement district? Or how do I know if a property's in a municipal utility district? It's a great question, right? Especially if your seller doesn't know, because a lot of sellers don't. They don't know, they just pay the tax bill. I mean, they might think that they're in one. This is what we've always done for our listing agents that Open Title does, okay? Hey, T, I want Open Title. Okay, great, 123 Main Street. Okay, great, title's open, right? Come back, tell you, hey, there's this lien, there's this lien, there's this lien. But what we also do is we pull a tax certificate. Why am I pulling a tax certificate? Because if I pull a tax certificate is going to disclose to me as the title company whether or not it's in a municipal utility district, a public improvement district. If it's on there and it's assessed by the tax assessor, which most developments are, I'm going to find it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, hey, Susie, I don't know why I said Susie, but Susie felt like a good name right now. Hey, Susie, this property's in Public Improvement District number 1, Valencia on the Lake, whatever, right? There is or there is not a form, because most public improvement districts have a website. You can actually find them on the county, the city's website. So you go to their website, and if they have a form, fantastic. But if that public improvement district has not created a website yet, or maybe they don't have a form, there is a statutory form that I have that I can send you, okay? So those are a few extra steps. If your title company's not doing all 5 of those steps, then you gotta find another one. I mean, screw what Tony said about keeping them. I'm kidding, okay? But seriously, that is how I let a lot of our listing agents know whether a property is in any sort of district, municipal utility district, public improvement district, special utility district, you name it, okay? That we can tell you. So you label it here, right? And you still attach it to the contract. All right, so this is not like you just fill this in, but you don't have to attach a disclosure. You still have to do both. That, and then give the disclosure.
Do you know if Trex working on a addendum for that, or a disclosure for that?
They do. There are some that exist for, depending on the type of district. Like say a public improvement district, one exists, right? A municipal utility district, MUD notices, they have their own forms. But, so it depends on the type of district.
Right, but I mean, it makes sense if Trex requiring that notice, that they
Create some sort of
create
form.
some
Yeah.
form, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that 100% makes sense. The problem with some of the districts is that there's not a whole lot of consistency yet with track on what notice they're going to provide. Some of that is because of what the water code provides. And I'm not going to bore you with the details of the law, but you're probably aware of the water code. But, so some of that, I think we will see more forms coming out, right? The Public Improvement District was the one that they worked on lately. Now, this is one of the most significant changes, in my opinion, as an attorney. And it's not getting talked about enough, but it's paragraph 7. And I'm gonna give you some good, hopefully some pretty good analysis on it. So this is paragraph 7F. And we can scroll up a little bit more. Paragraph 7F. Now remember, like I said, the blue is new, the red was struck. Okay? So let's look at blue. Let's look at the blue, and I'll read it for y'all. Seller shall, 1, provide buyer with copies of documentation from the repair persons showing the scope of work and payment for the work completed, and 2, seller, at seller's expense, arrange for the transfer of any transferable warranties with respect to the repairs and treatments. Thank you, baby Jesus, right? I love that change. I'm a huge fan of that. And let me tell you why. Because what happened before? Well, agents, you guys, before this change happened, you'd say, okay, well, you know, as a buyer's agent would say, okay, I'm gonna write this, and this in the contract for repairs. But I'm also gonna need to put in some sort of provision in my amendment, right? Requiring the seller to provide some proof that the repairs or the invoices, that the work was actually done, right? Because contractually, that wasn't there. It was never there, right? But it is now. So before, there was nothing contractually that required a seller to provide proof of repairs, absent some language that you as agents had to request of your clients, right? Wink, wink, put into the contract. So now we have a contractual obligation. The seller, has a contractual obligation to provide proof of the repairs and the receipts and that the work was done. Now, what happens if they don't? We go to what we've always had under 7F, right? We're going to go to the bottom of that sentence. And what does the bottom of that sentence says? In so many words, it basically says, as the buyer, you have the option to automatically extend the closing up to 5 days, or you can, pursue your remedies under paragraph 15. Well, what's paragraph 15? Well, that's the default paragraph. What's under that paragraph? Well, you can either terminate, get your earnest money back, or sue for specific performance. So not only does 7F now have a requirement, an obligation as a seller to provide proof that the work was done, but now there's a remedy for it. And before, there was no remedy for it. It didn't exist, right? Other than you arguing breach of contract because they didn't provide the repairs or the treatments. You had a question?
Yeah, so what if, we have these horrible foundation companies that make us pay like $500 to transfer a warranty.
Yeah.
So if the work wasn't done within the repair amendment, that there's a warranty out there for foundation that predated our contract, does the seller have an obligation to transfer that warranty to the buyer at their expense?
In other words, was work done prior to the execution between the contract with the seller and the current buyer? No, this contemplates work agreed to between the parties in this transaction, right? That's a great question. But this contemplates the contract between the buyer and the seller. Now, to your warranty question, to the warranty part of that, which is the second addition here, right? Seller at seller's expense shall arrange for the transfer of the warranty, right? That's big time too. Because guess what happened previously? It was negotiable. There was nothing that ever required a seller to pay the cost to transfer a warranty. I can't tell you how many times we came up to a closing, right? We send out the closing disclosure. Back in the good old days, the closing statement, the settlement statement, which I still miss that thing, right? We sent that out. And we just, because in my opinion, it should go on the seller side, but, not everybody agreed. We put the $500 transfer fee for the warranty on the seller side, and oh God, I'm not paying that. I use curse words usually. Screw you, title company. All sorts of stuff, right? And so we've heard it all. Well, why do I have to pay it? Well, I guess contractually you're right. You don't. Under the prior version of the contract, it's all negotiable. Should the buyer pay it? Should the seller pay it? Now we don't have to answer. We don't have to speculate. We don't have to ask that question because the seller now pays for it. So I'll tell you something, on the listing agent side, You need to pay attention when you're negotiating repairs, right? Because let's say that you negotiate, the buyer comes out, there's like $10,000 in foundation work. And the seller says, you know what? I'll pay that. I'll do it. But I'm not paying a penny more. Right? And what you don't think about maybe is that not only is it $10,000 of work, but maybe there's a $1,500 transfer fee for the foundation work. So not only is your seller out the 10, they're out another 1,500. So if I'm on the listing agent side, if I'm negotiating for work that I know is gonna have a warranty, you better be darn sure that you factor in the cost of the transfer with the work. Because it will, you now are on the hook to pay that warranty. If a warranty exists, the seller's paying for it. Right? So pay attention to that, because you don't want your seller to get upset and say, well, I said I'd only do 10. Well, there's a $1,500 warranty. Seller, you're paying for it. It's not negotiable at that point in time, unless you want to breach the contract, be subject to the remedies under 7F, right? And so, I mean, just to rehash on 7F, right? If that is not complied with, the remedies are automatically extended closing up to 5 days, or you pursue your remedies under 15, which are terminate and get your earnest money back, or sue for specific performance. I didn't mention this at all, but I've had my own law firm in addition to my title company for 10 plus years. I'm a real estate attorney for 14. I've handled a lot of lawsuits. I do a lot of litigation work. I've handled a lot of lawsuits where people want me to sue for specific performance. I consider myself a pretty decent attorney. You know how often I've gotten it granted? It's rare. So people that come to me and they're like, I want to sue for specific performance. Well, let's play that out. How much do you want to pay me, right? Because we're just throwing good money after bad at this point, right? So specific performance, in my opinion, it is a remedy that exists. And in fact, on my Instagram, I just did a video about the remedy. It does exist. But if somebody doesn't comply with 7F, right, you got to think that the buyer, you're going to have a practical conversation with the buyer at some point in time. Well, Sean, how would you extend the 5 days? Well, it's a unilateral extension. You don't have to get the seller's blessing. Now, what I would do is I would submit an amendment, and I would say, buyer is exercising his right pursuant to paragraph 7F to extend the closing up to 5 days. And then in that same amendment, I would go to the closing date paragraph, and I would change the closing date for 5 days to try to get the seller to sign that. But just know the seller doesn't have to sign that, okay? It's a unilateral right to extend, right?
Okay, so when you talk about specific performance and
Yeah.
ability to sue for it,
Mhm.
right? There's an opportunity here for both sides to sue for it, right? So buyer could sue for, hey, you agreed to do this stuff, and now you say you're not going to.
Yeah.
And are you finding roughly the same level of success in that suit? So
Yeah.
buyer making a seller do what he said he was going to do, and the seller.
That's a great question. It is easier to get a seller, a remedy of specific performance against a seller for things like this than it is to force a buyer, let's say, to buy a house they can't afford it, right? That is virtually zero on the success rate. When you're trying to sue a buyer to buy a home and they can't buy the home. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get a judgment? No, specific performance is not monetary, right? It's an action, which is the difference between that and a money judgment. Great question. But on that automatic extension, I know we're kind of going a little bit outside of the contract changes. So if me giving you these little legal tidbits is worth something, I'll keep doing it. If you want me to stop and just do contract changes, I can do that too. So the legal stuff helping a little bit? Yeah, okay. Yes, sir, you got a question in the back?
Yeah, so on 7F, there's a lot of speculation that I've seen on social media about where the scope of work will have to be detailed on the receipt. So, especially towards HVAC stuff like that. Has that been confirmed by Trek that they will require scope of work?
It has not been confirmed. That's another great question, and one that tends to get asked in every class, which is, how do we define what is scope of work? How broad is that? What does that look like? Well, one of the unfortunate things about contract changes, right, is that we don't have any precedent with which to rely on what scope of work is. So in my opinion, right, when we're in this sort of ambiguous limbo as to what something means, because nobody's litigated over it yet, you have to err on the extreme side of caution. So for me, scope of work, right, if I use it, the customary trade definition of scope of work, what I'm looking at is not a receipt from Joe Blow that says repaired, repaired the line into the HVAC unit. What I'm looking for is a detailed, their estimate, right? So if they sent you an estimate that's got 20 different line items on the scope of work, right? It was the estimate. What I did want, I want the receipt or the invoice to show that that scope of work, which was an estimate, is now paid. But it lays out the scope of work. So where I think you as agents, and I don't want you practicing law, obviously, but where I think you as agents could add some extra value that some other agents that haven't sat in these classes with me can add, is that when you get in these HVAC receipts, and if you just see performed work pursuant to estimate paid, no, absolutely not. You go back and you compare it to the scope of work, the estimate that was given by a legit contractor, right? And then I would ask, if it was me, I'm not an agent, but if I was, I would ask that contractor to resubmit the invoice to me with the scope of work, line out everything out, and then show that it was paid. Because that, to me, is for sure going to be a sufficient scope of work and proof of payment under the eyes of a judge or a jury. Somebody asked me in another class, which I thought was a really good question. They're like, what if you just like send pictures? Hell no. Excuse my language, right? I mean, no, that's not going to work, right? No, we want something formal. Yeah, I mean, when I taught this class a couple weeks ago, and this contractor, well, that's going to require a lot more work from me. Well, then I guess you better start working. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, right? If you want the work from the agent who's likely the one that referred you better step up your game. Simple. You don't get the business, right? So scope of work, make sure it's very detailed. Yes, sir.
So is there provision for this on the amendment? Because I just went to the contract because I'm old and I can't really read that from here. That being said, it says that you're agreeing to provide receipts and transfer warranty for agreed upon repairs. At this point, unless it's in the contract, those repairs have not been agreed upon yet. So we're going back to them after the fact. So does that apply?
Well, in other words, make sure I understand your question. Anything that's agreed to in the you can have a repair that's agreed to in the contract.
That's my point.
Right.
So
So that still applies to this, right? If I remember in your where you have the option to check what type of, nobody uses this. Everybody just puts, I'll show you right here.
yeah,
Okay.
as is.
As is. Everybody puts as is. Nobody really uses to, but in theory, you could use to agree upon a repair or treatment, and that 7F still applies to that.
Well, that, to me, it looks like that applies.
7F absolutely applies to this. If I agree to do a repair or treatment in here, that's a repair or a treatment. It's not just because it was signed on an amendment. At some point throughout the course of the transaction, from the execution of the contract to the closing, if I, in an amendment or in the contract, agree to do a repair or a treatment, then I have to follow 7F.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's my whole point. So as an agent, when I get an amendment on one of my listings, I need to be ready to point back to 7F for my.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because they're looking, they may not realize that now I've already agreed to
Yeah.
transfer the warranty. I've already agreed to pay for any of these repairs.
Yeah, no, and let me pull this up real quick. Yeah. I said shoot, by the way.
I heard
Okay. I don't know an attorney that doesn't curse, Tony, just so we're on the same page. To your point, right? If you go here, and this was one of the great, I just get to the amendment. One of the great additions on the amendment itself was exactly what you just said, which was notice, right, under here, notice, I'll read it. Notice paragraph 7 of the contract governs the completion, delivery of documentation, and transfer of warranties, repairs, and treatments. Right? So the beauty about that is that it cross-references what already existed, right? It just puts it more in the face of you as the agent.
It's good.
Right? I love it. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. Anytime you can cross-reference points of the contract, us as attorneys, we do that all the time. If you saw the commercial contracts I wrote, you'd be like, oh, heck, geez, it's a lot of cross-referencing. You don't see as much of that in the residential world. But so this was a good, it's right to your point, that was a good change because they said, if you don't do this, this is what happens, go to 7, is what that essentially says. So now we don't have to touch on the amendment anymore. That's nice. I like that. You guys have somebody on time too, Jimmy. I got it. All right, so I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. What we have next is one that I've always harped on for a long, well, no, we're not quite there yet. I'm gonna do paragraph 9 real quick, and then I'm gonna talk about special provisions. And then I'll defer to your broker on what you're allowed to do there. Number 9, okay? Private transfer fees. Has everybody ever heard of a private transfer fee? Not an HOA transfer fee. Okay, good, right? But they do exist, so let me tell you. An HOA transfer fee is easy, right? That is the HOA transferring the property from one person to another. Simple. A private transfer fee is significantly different. 2 entirely different legal concepts. A private transfer fee is a fee that's collected by a developer. So prior to the law change several years ago, right, private transfer fees are now illegal in the state of Texas. Okay.
Illegal?
Illegal. That's my moot court when I was in law school. And I did a trials, I did a lot of litigation work. My professor was like, you know, you're really good, Sean, but you have a Texas draw, so I just can't understand you. So I'm gonna have to give you a B. It's like, I'm not kidding. I got a B in my trial class because I have a draw. So that's probably why you couldn't understand what I was saying there. I came quickly back to Texas, if you know what I mean. But a private transfer fee is illegal now in Texas, but you can be grandfathered in. So I'll give you an example. A month ago, we closed on a property. There's a private transfer fee. A private transfer fee, again, is a fee collected by a developer pursuant to a restricted covenant. Okay? It says, most of them say, on every sale of this property, forever, the developer gets 1% of the sales price. That's a private transfer fee. And to be compliant with the law, the developer has to refile it now every 3 years. Okay? So we did this closing about a month ago. We pull title, we find it. We reach out to the seller, we're like, hey man, we're really sorry about this, dude, but you're gonna pay 1% of the sales price on this $600,000 house. $6,000 just goes right to the developer. Well, can I sue him? No, people have tried for years, right? And they kept refiling every 3 years, so it's valid. And what happened, I felt so bad for the seller. What also happened in that instance, though, is that the title company they bought at, that shall remain nameless, and I normally say that when I drop the name, but I'm actually going to keep it nameless today. Yeah, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to name the name of the title company, but another title company missed the transfer fee. Well, guess what? The restricted covenant runs with the land. It doesn't matter who owns the property. So they didn't pay $6,000. They paid $12,000. Now that would be a title claim against the title company they bought with, right? And they did file a title claim, okay? But that is a private transfer fee. It's not to be confused with an HOA transfer fee. So that's why paragraph 5 was written in there. I'm not going to read it, but it is there. And I will tell you, 99.99999% of sellers have no idea they have a private transfer fee. Yes, sir.
How does that relate to education? Like, so
Totally different, right? Craig Ranch, they got their nice, ridiculous community enhancement fund, education fund for $3,500. Absolutely different. But those fees are all assessed by the HOA themselves. This is a fee that literally goes right to the developer, to a trustee on behalf of the developer. Okay? And they have to get, frankly, they have to get paid.
John?
Yes.
Question.
Sure.
I had that come up one time recently, and it was at the end of the deal, it was missed as well. Is that, I guess everything's negotiable, but
Yeah, well,
that,
everything is negotiable. That's paid by, private transfer is paid by the seller.
okay, because they were wondering.
But look, everything's negotiable, right? You raise a good point, which is, as you guys know, even though the contract says that, at some point, the buyer and the seller, not through you as the agent, could say, hey, well, we're going to agree and we're going to instruct you, agent, to make the buyer pay for it and strike out the contract. But you guys know as an agent, you can't ever strike portions of the contract unless your client asks you to in writing. Yes, sir.
Would the title company be liable for that?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, that's why we, off the record told them to file a title claim, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's what they did.
That's why you.
That's why you get title insurance, right? I mean, that's, our job is to look at title plans, right? Title plans are repositories of public data. That's our job. That's what we go look for.
Well, it's our job to know those communities that have them.
They're not, there aren't as many, I will tell you, I don't know any one of them in Dallas, where you will see them are up and around here, right? So they tend to be North Dallas. They're not East Dallas, they're not West Dallas, they're not Dallas, they're not South Dallas. They tend to be in what at the time, 20, 30 years ago, were developing areas, Frisco, McKinney, right? Areas around here is where you will see them. But they're not that common. I mean, I'll just give you, we close a lot of deals every year, and I maybe came up 5 times last year.
Those are scumbag developers.
Oh, of course, which is why it's illegal now. Yes, sir.
Oh, I recently closed a deal in Foster, and
Yep.
they had that issue going on, but the builder and my buyers signed basically that if the lawsuit didn't go through, that my buyers would have to pay for that transfer.
Yeah, and they would, right? There are a number of lawsuits against these developers for private transfer fees. Some have been successful, some haven't been completely adjudicated yet, some have failed. It just depends. It depends on, the developer does have a very detailed statutory framework that they have to follow, and if they don't follow it, you can likely get that restriction declared void. But it is subject to the litigation.
So, and this may be a legal decision question that you can't answer, but in your case, where it was missed when the buyer purchased it, does that put the title company on hook for both transfers?
No, just the one that was subject to their transaction.
Because essentially they bought a property that they may not have bought had they known that.
Well, yeah, there's a title claim answer to that, right, which is the 6,000. And then there's a whole other host of things that we can talk about as it relates to a lawsuit against the title company.
Okay.
Right, so I'm not gonna give anybody ammo to come after. No, I'm kidding. I
No,
didn't-
and I wasn't looking for that.
No, but you raise a good point, right, which is if the title company subject to damages, they might very well be. But what's probably gonna happen is they're gonna just pay the claim from whatever it was, 2017, they're just gonna pay the claim, reimburse the person and move on. Special provisions, I'm gonna hit these because I'm probably definitely not gonna have a chance to get to all the addenda. Special provisions, I'll read it. This paragraph is intended to be used only for additional informational items. An informational item is a statement that completes a blank in the contract form. This was special information provides instructions. Real estate brokers and sales agents are prohibited from practicing law and shall not add to, delete, or modify any provision of this contract unless drafted by an attorney to the contract or a party's, by a party to the contract or a party's attorney. That is the rule that has been around forever. Okay? But the Broker Lawyer Committee in TREC said, geez, there's too many agents practicing law in the state of Texas, right? We got to do something to stop that. And so that's why that was added. I am not a proponent of using special provisions, really, in most instances, right? I will give you a textbook example of the unauthorized practice of law that probably, well, maybe not in this room, but every room I normally teach in, probably 50% of the agents do. Right? This offer shall be accepted by 5 p.m. on Friday, otherwise it's null and void. Boom, practice of law. That's the easiest one, right? Because you added null and void. That's a legal consequence. That's the unauthorized practice of law. What could you put in there? Nothing, yeah, nothing, right? Nothing. And Tony and I talked about this for 10 years probably. I don't like anything being put in special provisions. If I was even going to touch on something like that as an agent, what I would do is put it in an email. I would just say, hey, the buyer respectfully requests that the seller respond by this offer by 5 p.m. on Friday. Period. Done. End of sentence. But let me give you a little secret. You adding that language null and void, even if you wrote it, it doesn't do anything. Right? Because you still have to withdraw the offer. Right? So whether I add that or I don't add it, doesn't really matter. If I submit the offer and I want to withdraw my offer at 5:01 on Friday, then I have to withdraw my offer as the buyer. Right? Don't do what this agent did 2 weeks ago and called me and said, Sean, I made a boo-boo, which is how most of my conversations start. And I'm like, well, what happened? Well, I submitted an offer, and then 3 days later, we submitted an offer on another property. Offer on the second property was accepted. 5 days later, the seller on the first offer accepted. What can I do? Well, did you withdraw? No, I didn't. Okay, well, now you're part of number 2 contracts. I mean, a seller has a reasonable amount of time with which to accept an offer. 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, that's probably all pretty reasonable. But now I ended up getting that agent out. We resolved it for other reasons. I just sent a nice little lovely letter and it was problem solved. But, most people that don't have a real estate attorney in their pocket wouldn't be able to do that, right? So don't put anything in special provisions. I mean, I draft addenda, pretty up there. I draft addenda all the time for agents, right? It's got my little name. Now, I will say, I know Tony's position on it. He's probably going to want to see it first, even though he trusts me, right? But I mean, if I draft addendum, it says this was drafted by Sean Clements and State Bar number 2406505. Right? No restrictions on use, et cetera, right? So you follow the broker's position on whether or not you can use separate addenda. And if you use that addenda, it has to be drafted by an attorney. Okay, just please.
Yes, I question with that.
Yes, sir.
Can we put your name in the contract?
Tiago title, boom, yeah. You did, I answered your question in a couple parts. Tiago title can always close the transaction, right? If I and I can draft addenda and I can still close the transaction. If a buyer or a seller hires me as an attorney, their attorney, then I can't close the transaction because that's a conflict of interest. Right, but I can draft an addenda because if both parties sign the addenda, there's no conflict of interest. They sign the addenda, no problemo, right? And you can add Tiago title, Tiago, Title, to your contract. But yes, I could close it. Unless I represent somebody in my official capacity as an attorney, then I can't close it. Which doesn't really happen in residential. It happens more in the commercial world.
Let me ask you
Sure.
clarification, because I guess we were working with the title company, and they said, oh, we have a separate law firm that can actually do that. So the context I understood was the law firm was separate from the title company, therefore I could use them as an.
They are separate, right? Like I have a law firm that is separate from Tiago title. Where I think that there could be a conflict is I own both, right? So I own Tiago title with 2 partners, and I own a law firm with a partner. My opinion, how can I be impartial? Maybe I'm just play by the book, but how can I be impartial as the title company when I'm serving, and I own the title company, when I'm serving in my capacity as an attorney for a buyer or seller, right? Because as a title company, our job is to be neutral. I'm a neutral third party, can't represent anybody. So if I take a position one way or the other, then I could have arguably breached my fiduciary duty. So in my opinion, that could be possible where they have an affiliated law firm that's not owned by the same person, but it's a little different for us. Yes, sir.
Special provision. So we have time to ask you to write something in the contract. Like how do you document that? I'm gonna ask.
Just give me your hypothetical because it probably applies to you, right?
Yeah. So they send an email or whatever and say, hey, I want this in the contract. Do you then I guess print that email or PDF download or something so you can have proof that they asked for this and then add to special provision?
If that's exactly how it worked, then yes, right? I've always laughed a little bit because the whole the agent calls the buyer, hey, send me an email that says this, right? Like, please don't ever do that. Not that you did, but don't ever do that. But if a buyer or a seller truly does that, and they're like, I want to change this general warranty deed to a special warranty deed, or I want to draft this language, heck yeah, save the email. Yeah. And you are allowed to follow their written instruction.
Yeah.
Now, the only time you can't follow their written instruction is if they're asking you to do something that violates the canons of professional ethics or breaks the law. Which you can't, which you can't.
So I mean, just be real transparent. So if they're asking for they're asking something, by phone call, and I'm just saying, hey, you know what, I need you to send me an email so I can have that written, right?
Yeah, that's the right way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like I say, I work with a lot of investors and they want like, special stuff or whatever. I'm like, hey, you gotta write that to me and I can't just.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like you're doing it the right way, which is, if somebody calls you, an investor, buyer, whoever calls you, it's like, I want this in the contract. My response always would be, hey, I hear you. Shoot me an email to that effect. And not just shoot me an email and paraphrase. I want you to shoot me an email with the exact language you want in the contract. Because what you can't do, where some agents make some mistakes, is some agents they'll get an email that's sort of paraphrased from their client, and then they tweak it and they add it and they make it a little prettier. You can't do that, right? So send me what language, the exact language you want in the contract, and I'll drop it in there.
Tony just broke out the sweat.
I mean, he is sweating right now, yeah. Damn you, Sean. All right, let me touch on the notices. I mean, we're not gonna be able to get through all the addenda that changed, but the contract was the most important of them. This to y'all might seem like such a minor change, but to me it's not, right? So I'm gonna show you with a copy to buyer's agent. This is the notices section. With a copy to buyer's agent at, with a copy to seller's agent at. Oh, geez, Sean, that's not that big of a deal. Yes, it is. All right, let me tell you, okay? What's always been sort of customary in the business is that agents will put their contact information, like CO, in care of, right? Because they're all, agents are worried about, I get it, they're worried about the other side contacting their agent direct, or contacting their client directly. Here's the truth and reality, right? Is that an agent can contact the other side as long as they're not soliciting the business, right? So let me tell you why this is important to me. Because I am a strong advocate of putting your client's contact information with a CC to you. Why do I care so much about that? Why? Because you're assuming liability. If you're the only one in the notices section, you're assuming the liability for the notice. I'll give you a real life example. 8 years ago, I was hired as an attorney to represent a seller's agent. Okay? Seller's agent was going to somewhere overseas, Europe, right? Well, 8 years ago, we all know the technology is not what it is today. The self-service wasn't what it is today. Wi-Fi wasn't what it is today. So she goes to Europe, right? We all deserve vacations, right? She goes to Europe for 3 weeks. Well, a notice comes in from the buyer terminating the contract. Okay, comes in, terminates the contract. There is a procedure in the contract that allows the party, the non-requesting party, to object within 15 days. If you object within the 15 days, then the title company is not allowed to release the earnest money. So who do you think the notice went to? Okay, it went to the seller's agent, right? Seller's agent didn't have cell reception, didn't have Wi-Fi, doesn't forward the notice of termination in the request, right? She comes back 3 weeks later. On the 16th day, the title company, which we would never do it, we would require a signed release, as with 99.99% of title companies. But the title company is like, oh, okay, well, we can release it, and we're free from liability. So they released the $10,000 back to the buyer. Seller's agent comes back, she's like, oh, what, stuff, right? And then she submits it to her client, but at that point, the earnest money was already gone. Right, so who do you think the seller sued? It wasn't the buyer, it was the agent, it was my client. You didn't forward me the notice, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. Now I ended up, this is kind of embarrassing, but it's not really, but as attorneys, we like to dig up dirt on people, right? So I dug up dirt on the buyer and it's like, you really don't want this to come out, do you, right? So then they let my client go, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the legal world, but you have to do what you gotta do for your clients, not unethical. But anyway, we got the money, we got the agent out. I got the agent out. But had we not done that, she would have paid, or her E&O would have paid $10,000. And so that's my problem with putting only your contact information in there. Now again, technology is much greater these days, right? And as long as you're forwarding notices and things like that, then I'm not as concerned about it. But you still increase liability for yourself, which is why I like this change so much, because now it makes it abundantly clear that you can put your client's contact information and you can put a CC for you. Now, there are instances where I support putting your contact information only. You've got a 95-year-old, client, right? Doesn't do DocuSign, doesn't do email, right? Doesn't do phone, whatever. If she's emotional, you don't want her to get all these emails. Maybe she does email, but you don't want her to get 50 emails throughout the course of the transaction and freak out. I get that. But don't go on vacation throughout that whole contract, unless you plan to forward notices, okay? But that's really it on the contract. Now, again, I have, Tony, I'm not on my time.
Can we look at that third party?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a good, yeah, let's do that for sure. A lot of these, I'll just tell you really quick. Other ones, do I have time to hit the third party in HOA?
On notices, can I ask a notices question?
I'll do third party, okay. Yes, you can ask.
I've got a question on notices. So in reference to notices, there are documents that are named notice. So does notices apply to only documents named notice, or does notice apply in what should be sent to the other party?
A notice
Apply
to me,
all documents.
I define the term notice is any communication, right? Not just a notice of termination or a notice to purchaser. I believe that it all should go. Right now, there's some stuff that's more important, right? Notice of termination, that's obviously more important, right? Like, but there's not going to be a whole lot of communication that happens throughout the course of a transaction necessarily between the buyer and the seller, so to speak, right? I mean, you guys as the agents are going to negotiate repairs. Well, that's not a notice, right? So anything that's significant for sure. Let me hit on this third party financing. So this is the third party financing addendum. I'll read it to y'all really quick. A loan, that's G, other financing, which I love because it's nice and broad. A loan not of the type described above from name of lender and the principal amount due in term with interest rate not to exceed X percent for the first year with origination charges not to exceed percent of the loan. That's all fine, right? But what's really important is this last paragraph, the last sentence there. Buyer does or does not waive all rights to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of this addendum for the loan described in this paragraph. So you're either going to elect other financing to be subject to property approval or you're not. But you got to check it one way or the other. If I was a listing agent and it was a hard money loan or private financing or a line of credit, I don't want it to be subject to paragraph 2B because that's the point of a hard money loan, right? Or a line of credit, right? Because if you put 2B, you guys know what 2B says. It's right there, right? That allows an out. So perspective, right? If I'm on the sales side, I don't want that to be subject to it. If I'm on the buy side, I do, right? So just think about that. That's the change on the third-party financing addendum. Y'all, just tell you this. I won't go through it because I know we're on time. Pay attention to what the HOA addendum says now, okay? The HOA addendum, 6 months ago, we had it one way. 5 months ago, they flipped it. Now it's back to what it was before, okay? So read that. Yeah. Shoot. Oops. This text side of me is just not good. Yeah, I just cannot let myself describe this. Fees, I'll read it to you. So under C, there's a lot of pushback. I wrote a 4-page letter to General Counsel that tracked my disdain of the prior addendum. What they've added, this paragraph does not apply to 1, regular periodic maintenance fees, assessments, or dues, including prepaid items, big deal, right, that are prorated by paragraph 13 and costs and fees provided by paragraphs A and D. Okay, so before this change, we were doing prepaid items like working capital contribution. Those fees were being paid by the seller if you didn't put a high enough amount in that blank. There was no consistency among title companies. But the legal and Texas realtors, they put a notice out about it, which was right, which was, you had to pay attention to how you phrased this, right? Because if you put $100 in there like you used to, and it was a $500 working capital contribution, the buyer pays $100 and then the seller paid $400 for the working capital contribution. So pay attention to that last sentence now. It, in a way, tweaked it back arguably, right? Because it references prepaid items, but I have a strong feeling that this paragraph right here is even gonna cause continued controversy. Right, because it's still, to me, with all due respect, it's too ambiguous. What is prepaid items? Well, I personally define a prepaid item as a working capital contribution, you know, whatever capital contribution, but Tony might define it differently. Right, so,
Assessments.
yeah, do what?
Assessment.
Assessments, right, and that was part of, that was a big problem, is that sellers were ended up paying 2 months of prepaid dues for buyers. Well, that's not fair, right? I think that for sure is defined in here. I think that's gonna limit that. What I'm curious about is prepaid items. That's what I'm curious about. So working capital contributions, things of that nature. All right, I think I went over my time, so I apologize, Tony.
Could I ask you just one question on the third party?
Yep. If
Because
that's okay, Tony, yeah. Yeah.
we're in a high interest rate environment, you know, like,
Yeah.
a lot of those terms will say interest rate not to exceed X and closing costs not to exceed X. So how do you address that in a period where rates keep going? And maybe even closing costs could exceed those items in that paragraph?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'll play out basically the end result of the byproduct of that question, which is if you put 5% in the third-party financing addendum and it comes back that the lender says they can only get 7, can you terminate the contract as the buyer because you didn't get 5, right? Which is normally what people ask as it relates to the third-party financing addendum. And now what I want to show you, or what I'll just caution you against, or have you be conscious of, is even in the, let's just talk even in a conventional world, right? So you could put a percentage in there, right? But what a lot of people don't do is scroll down to paragraph 2 and read how that comes into play. Paragraph 2, approval for the financing described above will be deemed to have been obtained when the buyer approval and property approval are described. Times of the essence for the paragraphs, so compliance with the time performance is required, all right? So this contract is subject to buyer obtaining buyer approval. Buyer cannot obtain buyer approval, give written notice, et cetera. Buyer does not terminate. Buyer approval will be deemed to have been obtained when the terms of the loans described above are available, and lender determines that the buyer has satisfied all the lender's requirements related to the assets and commitment credit history. I have litigated cases over that paragraph because what happens is the term available, right? So if the 5% in your hypothetical is available, and the buyer chooses not to lock it because they could lock it, you're going to have been deemed to have buyer approval pursuant to that first paragraph, right? Or this first portion, because it was available. And so for me, when buyers try to terminate based on the fact that somehow the interest rate is higher than what they expected, it's more than just, oh, okay, it's when was it available? Did you lock it? Were you approved at the time? Right? You got to ask those questions first. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. If you please feel free to text me or call me anytime with legal questions. I mean it. Tony, he's not lying. I mean, I'm available 7 days a week. So text me, call me, ask me the questions. If you need language written for your contract, ask me. We're in a pretty aggressive era with TREC right now. TREC is filing more enforcement actions right now than they have in years. I have 5 complaints I am defending for agents right now. Okay? And agents that I consider really good agents that have sat through my classes. 5. That's, I mean, right? But there's the stuff that people don't think about, right? So don't get lazy on your contracts because I promise you TREC will come for you. Okay? Yes, sir. If I can answer one more.
An agent should never answer a question that they're not completely assured of. Period. Too many agents get themselves in trouble by answering the question instead of saying, hey, I really don't know, let me call my title company and get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I've understood why people choose to answer questions, just in real estate and in life, why they answer questions that they don't know the answer to. I get it, because you don't want to seem like you don't know, but I mean, honestly, he knows best, knows how little he knows, right? Thomas Jefferson said that, right? So it's okay to say, I don't know, let me call my attorney, right? Let me tell you another secret. Most title companies don't have attorneys, right? And if they do, they're title attorneys. They're not real estate attorneys, right? So if you're gonna ask an attorney a question, I mean, I'm a real estate corporate and title attorney. Make sure that they're real estate and title. And I agree with you. Don't answer a question if you don't know the answer. Just say, hey, you can still look good when you say, hey, my buddy is a real estate attorney. Well, let me give him a buzz real quick, and I'll get right back to you. That makes you look good, right? Yes.
I've been in the real estate business since God was a child. And because the real estate contracts, especially the promulgated contracts, change all the time, you're
Yeah.
better off to say, hey, I don't know. Let
Yeah.
me call you.
Yeah, because you don't, the worst thing you can ever do, one of the worst things you can ever do as an agent is make a misrepresentation, right? And misrepresentation, verbal or written, is very easy for an attorney to attack, right? So don't tell your client that they can have a VRBO, right, and interpret deed restrictions. Don't tell your client that they can build a pool when they can't. You shouldn't answer any of those questions. I don't care if you know the answer. It's not your place to answer. It's an attorney's place to answer that, right? Because you can't interpret deed restrictions. You can't determine whether something can be leased. You can't determine whether, or what you can, but you're not supposed to. So you can say, I called my real estate attorney and he said this. But I agree with you. The forms change a lot, but in a way, we're super blessed in Texas because as somebody that does a lot of work nationwide, Texas has one of the best contracts around.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much. Secret weapon Sean, as I call him. So, the reality is I get asked all the time, Tony, how do you know all this stuff about the contract? And, how you're so smart about this stuff. And the reality is you're looking at my secret weapon, Sean. Probably 90% of what I know and what I learned about contracts over the years in law, I've learned from Sean, or at least started there. And now that I've become a broker, and when I was a broker in my previous brokerage, I learned it through experience, unfortunately. So when he talks about Trek being more aggressive than usual, I can tell you that. He said he's defending 5. I think we've got Karen, I think we had 5 yesterday, right, or something? So that said, listen to everything you said. Was that valuable, y'all, to have?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Sean didn't get a chance to really get into a lot of the addenda stuff. Would it be valuable to have him back maybe next month? We're going to do this monthly, so is that valuable? Okay. All right, so coming up next, listen, I am so excited. You all are in for an amazing treat. The top kind of billing on this event was limitless lead generation strategies. And this individual I have coming up, he is one of the top brokers I have on my team. I call him Rockstar Rick Carr because he's a freaking rock star. He has been training for years, helping agents become more and more productive in their business. He's a lead generation master. He's run offices all over this country, certainly all over Texas. And he's also served as I think, president of a few different associations. He's just the man, period. So again, I could have chosen anybody to come up here and talk about lead generation strategies and what works and what's working right now and going to continue to work in 2023. And I asked managing broker Rockstar Rick Carr. Many of y'all know him already. He's been out and about, of course, at holiday parties and other events here in North Texas because he up until now has been a North Texas managing broker. And we're actually expanding his territory as well. So he's going to be also helping out West and helping out with some other areas in Texas. So Rick Carr, please put your hands together for Rockstar Rick Carr. He intentionally was all the way in the back, so we have to wait for him. He likes building the suspense and doing this whole thing.
Hey everyone, thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, right? When your boss asks you to come, you accept that invitation. It wasn't a tough decision, trust me. Thank you all for being here. Cappers, icons, right? What can I teach you? I guess you'll find out. My goal as a trainer is that when I spend some time with you, is that hopefully you're able to take one thing back to your business, back to your office, apply it to your business and have some success with it, right? I haven't written the Bible, so to speak, in real estate by any means. But again, that's my hope and that's my goal, is that you're able to take one thing back to your offices, have some success with it. So thank you, brother. I'm going to be moving all around. You're doing a lot of work today. I hope they're paying you well. But let's get into this. That's me. Thank you. I have been, there we go. I've been at this 28 years. Tucker said, since God was a child. I don't know if that long, Tucker, but I do like to say since Moby Dick was a minnow. Right? Started sales first 12 years, management, brokerage, operations for, I guess, about the last 16. First license in Colorado, depending on what part of the country you're from, in 95. I jumped to the top of the market at a rapid pace. And it's not because I was the best, the fastest, the smartest. A lot of it is I asked a lot of questions. Like Tony King, I'm a combat veteran. In the Army, we used to say the only dumb question is the one not asked. When something I do or don't do could cost somebody else their life on my tank, or all of us, you learn to ask questions early and often. If you've ever come and visited with me in the broker room, I like to tell you, these are great. I love to help you keep your rear from getting into a sling. It's much easier than trying to extract it back out of that sling once it's there, right? At that point, you're probably calling Sean. There's only so much I can do. So ask those questions. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Again, the questions are what ramped me up and got me to the top of my market at a rapid pace. Just shy of the 2-year mark. And again, it's not because I was the best, the smartest, the fastest, because I worked to ask those questions. You know, there was a comment made in the last presentation, something to the effect of asking those questions. And being careful when you answer certain questions. And what I like to add on to that is be careful. Hey, will the city allow short-term rentals? Oh yeah, I've got 3. Are you sure? Did that stop? Did that change? What you have done is effectively become the source of information for the client. And I hope that you're right. I say our buyers and sellers have homework. I don't do everything for you in the transaction. You've got an obligation. Will the city allow short-term rentals? I believe so, but why don't you go talk to Sally? Here's the number of the city, right? What we don't want to have happen is them to get in, buy the home, go to pull their permit, and the city says, gosh, we stopped those. Hard day at the office for you, for sure. So, and I had a very important businessman mentor in my life about answering questions. He said, son, if you don't know the answer to the question you're being asked, tell them. They may be testing your integrity. They may already know the answer to the question they're asking you. Maybe they're testing your integrity, maybe it's your competency. You don't have an obligation to know anything and everything. Lord knows I sure don't. But just keep that in mind when you're out there working for those clients. Get off the soapbox, broker soapbox here. Me, again, 28 years, Colorado, sold first 12. You know, I probably wouldn't be standing in front of you today if I hadn't burned out. Anybody running through a little burnout in their business? Yeah, I equate it to the hamster running in the wheel. And every now and then that hamster just gets moving. And then what happens? Well, the hamster just gets looped over by the wheel and starts going around and around with the wheel rather than running it. That was me about 12 years in. I took a break, moved into education. From there, moved into management brokerage. I was an agent that helped other agents. Again, why did you come to me as an agent? I'm not the smartest, the best. I think part of it was they were afraid the broker would know that they didn't know everything. What I would like to go back and tell them 28 years before is that hey, the good brokers already know you don't know everything, and they appreciate those questions. And they appreciate you leaning on them for support. That's no different here at the company. So getting into it, we, past president association, that's one of my proudest accomplishments. And I don't really consider it mine, but I guess in a way it is. When your peers put you up on a pedestal and say, this is the guy, this is the gal we want to represent us at the local, state, national level, that's a pretty cool thing to happen. If you're not active in your realtor associations, do it. Past president association, I call on people to lead a committee and they'd say, no, thank you. I thought everybody'd be in line for that. No, they're not. But that will carry you far. I promise you, working with your peers, please take those opportunities as they're presented to you. As I said again, my objective and objective for our time here today, and we're finishing up for me about 12, right? Modify that?
Yeah.
Okay, we got all day? Finish up about 7 o'clock, folks. So let's talk to you today.
As long as their bladders will hold. you guys-
As long as their bladders will hold. Well, I want them like this, right? If I get them like that, chances are great. Get back to the basics. What am I going to teach you that you don't already know? Icons, raise your hand. I mean, what am I going to teach you that you don't already know? Some of it's just a matter of getting back to the basics. I've written a 4-hour class called Success in the Shift. I like to say that class can be taught with a sentence or two. Times like these are a natural process, a thinning of the herd. The difference between those that make it in tough times and those that aren't in this industry are the ones that are working. It's just that simple. Ran an office, 208 agents, another office, 32 agents. It's a ghost town on Fridays. It's a ghost town on holidays. Nobody buys over the holidays. Nobody buys or sells over the holidays, right? No, nobody works over the holidays. That's what I've seen as a managing broker. But you take your holidays, what you need to. Avoid that burnout. Have some balance in your life. But just be mindful as you go through the process. So getting back to the basics is what I say here. Go back to the tried and true. Go back to what's worked for you. Implement systems. How many team leads in here? Anybody working with real estate babies? People in the first year or two? You are, okay. I love that. I love that. I'm hoping to give you some things that maybe you're able to take back and share with those real estate babies as well. Because they're tuned in, they're watching. They're watching you how you roll out in the field, they're watching you how you roll in just events like this. I say in this business, old agents never die, they just grow listless, right? Listings are the name of the game. I've got a 26-year-old starting, her side hustle is real estate. Her primary is an exec for a title company. And she came to me yesterday and she said, Dad, I really think I want listings. And I said, you don't say. Wow. Have you heard anything I've been saying for your whole life, right? Listings are the name of the game. So I want you to own that inventory. He or she controls the listings, controls the inventory. We know that, right? I'm preaching to the choir. We've got 20 buyers going after one property. The listing agent's going to get half the deal, at least. So that's what we should be gearing towards. Buyers are great. I love them. I used to have, when I sold, people would say, are you a buyer's agent or a selling agent or a listing agent? I'd say, well, whatever you need me to be. Sign here. But as you go back and you start to revise yourself, I don't know that you're going to reinvent yourself, but just go back to the basics. I recommend that you track that, is that you track your results, right? I'll have people go out and they'll do one thing, they'll come back and say, I didn't have any luck there. I've never seen the absolute ninja at every prospecting group we can go to, right? I haven't. Have you? Has anybody seen somebody that's the absolute master at for sale by owners, expires, open houses, sphere of influence? I haven't seen a master of all of them, but I've seen a lot of masters of one. How did they get there? I don't know. Maybe they just done luck. Maybe they just tried it one day, got good at it, and stuck it out. When I used to make dinner for my daughter, she would look at it and say, no, thank you. That hurt me. First of all, that hurt, right? All the time and effort I put into that great food. But the army in me comes out and I'm like, what's wrong with it? And she says, well, it doesn't look good. Eat it. Eat it, right? That's right. It doesn't look, and I said, well, food's meant to be eaten, not to be looked at. I'm sure there are a lot of people that disagree with me, but that was my army kicking in, right? Eat the food. And so the deal I had with her was a no thank you helping. Go in, take one bite. Let me know what you think about that. A no thank you helping meant I don't want it, but I'm going to try it anyway. And believe it or not, there were plenty of times she liked what I was making. It just wasn't visually appealing. Oh well. So the important thing here is that have your no thank you helping as you start to run through these systems. Don't hold one open house, you know that. Don't knock expireds for a few weeks. Have a system. That's why I asked how many of you have babies. How many have people that you can put right beside you, agents, right on your hip and say, this is how we do it. This is how we roll. getting back to some of those basics might do some cool things for you. I don't know, you might pick a deal or two up that you weren't even planning on having, that you didn't plan for. And that's what I'm hoping you're able to do too, because that's real money. The most powerful thing that I've had happen in my career is when people come back to me and say, hey, you helped me here, or you said this, or you nudged me over here. And that is just an absolutely cool thing. You can't take those compliments to the bank and cash them. You can't take the thank you, sir, you made an impact in my life to the bank. I can't pay my mortgage with them, but that's what really matters to me. It's somebody that spent half my life in what I'm doing here. When people come back and say, hey, I appreciate it. Along the way, at this point you said this, at this point you did that, and I'm thinking I did. Wow, that sounds great. Don't remember it, but good. Glad you bought what I was selling. So I just want you to know that. Have your no thank you helpings, track your progress, and let's get into one of my favorite groups to go to. You've never heard of this before. For sale by owners. Expireds. What about cancels? Interesting. Anybody out there actively prospecting canceled listings? Okay, 3. I like those odds. I love those odds. We've got some top, hey, when I started rocking and rolling, I got too busy for the prospecting. I sometimes wonder how much I would have really done if I wasn't too busy to do the things that help me build my business. Because once I had that pipeline going in, just coming in. Door knocking, yeah, that's for new agents, right? I don't know. For sale by owners, expireds, cancels, what do they all have in common?
They all raise their hand at one point.
They all raise their hand at one point. Yep. Yeah. They all have expressed an interest in selling. I love your sphere. I can't tell you the last 2 times I've been asked to speak, they've asked what I want to speak on. I told them and they said, which is this? And they said, yeah, but what about sphere? Absolutely incredible. You have to be working your sphere, but to me, that goes without saying. You've got to be working that sphere if you're not somebody else's, right? We're having agents leave the business. Anybody seen that? Agents leaving? Yeah. Boom, boom. Next thing you know, 2 chairs on either side of you are open. Agents are leaving the business. And you know what else they're leaving? Their sphere of influence behind. So I recommend you really look into that, dig into that. Cancels, I'm going to tell you real quick. Well, maybe not real quick. What kind of quick? Cancels. Thank you, Mom. I'll be here all day. I get one laugh. I love it. From our perspective, we saw terminations ramp up. I don't know, Karen, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. We know if they're canceling, they're terminating her for one reason or another, the listing agreement, right? They want to get out of it. They're done. Now, sometimes it's because, hey, we're going to wait until the spring, or we've got somebody going into surgery that's going to do some healing, or this or that or that. But I'm going to tell you the majority of the time, it's because their agent didn't get their home sold. You stuck your sign in the ground, you put your lockbox on the door. Believe it or not, they thought you were there to sell a home. Even though, Brian, when you took that listing, you said, folks, you're about 25% too high. I mean in price. Right? You're going to help to sell other people, because that's what I've seen in this business, and especially right now. My buyers build value based on what they see, not what sold historically, not on historical sales. Appraisers use that as a basis. Agents do. We have to use the sold, that's the group we want to be in. But my buyers build value based on what you see. So a little bonus here, a little bonus fry is this. Price yourself aggressively with the competition. I'm preaching to the choir, I know. When I'm performing market analysis, I want to know what my active competition looks like. About 2-3 years into the business, the switch flipped, and I started to really focus on, I embraced and understood and came to the belief of that buyers build value based on what they see. And when I started to point that out to the sellers, and I was allowed to, and or we decided to aggressively price ourselves to the competition, my listings started to fly off the shelves. There's never been a more important time to be pricing yourself to the competition. Nobody sells over the holidays. Nobody sells and buys. I listed my house December 12th, had a contract, 10 days, had multiple offers 10 days later. First offer came in about 6-7 days. Well, there's a catch. The catch is my home was worth $650,000 if I had sold it a year and a half ago. but now it's worth 550, 575 tops. So when you run into that seller that knows that, what do? I mean, what I say is, hey, bro, hey, sis, hey, y'all, you're gonna be helping to sell these other homes right here. So I had a big stream of business that came to me from past clients. And there was a common thread. More times than not, I would hear when they would come back, well, so-and-so said I should use you. Rick tells it like it is. Or he tells it how it is up front. I always thought to myself, what other time is there to tell it than today when I've got the listing agreement in my hand? Because if it comes out 6 months later, it's an excuse. Or I have a dumb look as I'm looking up at the corner of the room thinking to myself, I wish I had told them that, right? I wish I had told them this. So yeah, I tell it how it is and I tell it how it is up front. Anything after comes out is an excuse. So you gotta have these conversations. Quickly, do you take an overpriced listing? Okay, Real Estate 101 taught me back when Moby Dick was at Minnow that you do not take an overpriced listing. You're losing money from day one if you take a listing that is overpriced. And I packed my briefcase up back when we presented these things live and in person, and I would walk out when somebody was way out of range where I wanted to be, and I'd say, hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much. I know you guys have a beautiful home here. I wish you luck in selling it as I'm walking to the door. Half of them would let me walk. The other half would say, hold on a second. I wish I could say, oh, we're, 90% of them. No, it was half and half. But when I had that business, I wasn't fearful of losing. It didn't make a difference to me. Somebody else was going to be there. I'd walk out of that overpriced listing, and then what would happen? Here comes my peer, just sneaking in behind me, right? Sneaking in. Take that listing, take it at that overpriced amount. And then what would they do? Yeah, they'd reduce the price, and they'd reduce the price, and they'd reduce the price, and then they'd end up getting a sale. So who won out of that? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you how it is. If I'm going to ride that sinking ship down, I'm going to tell you it's because of your price. I'm going to tell you it's because of this or that. Had a broker tell me years and years and years ago, it's always price, and I didn't agree. But as I've gone through my career, I've started to come back around to where he is, it is price. Because I always thought it could be the hog farm. It could be the neighbor next door that hasn't mowed in 10 years. It could be all of these things. Well, it sure could be, but price. It always goes back to that. So get in front of your sellers, tell them often what's happening, talk to them about what's going on in the market. Bro, I'm pulling stats every week. I'm pulling market analysis. I want to see what came to market. I want to see what went under contract. When I came in, it got that contract 10 days, and it finalized everything on the 12th day after multiple offers. There were homes that had been on the market for weeks, months. I wonder if their agents knew that I was able to slip in there and snag that buyer. So I'm just going to recommend you do those things.
I'll say, Rick, I'll take an overpriced listing, but I have the conversation ahead of time. So when we talk again in 30 days, this is what we're going to do. I told you this was going to happen, so in 30 days, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, well, it's the old
Depending on volume, yeah.
It's the old mentality of, what do I know? I only do this for a living. I don't know if you can use that. If you can and you get away with it, let me know. If you can tell your client that, right? I don't know, Terry, I only do it for a living. My goodness. So, but the market definitely speaks, and the market will definitely rough some of those people up for you. You don't have to do it. Just be the one that says, hey, here's the issue. Listings are the name of the game. We know that. You wouldn't be in this room today if you weren't listing agents. But when I talk about those cancels, I know that people are unhappy with their agent. I'm going to work those like a hawk. If I'm just only selling, I'm going to work these like a hawk. I'll never forego my sphere. That's a given. But I'm going to work these. I want the listings. I was telling somebody the other day, and they just were so shocked. It almost surprised me how shocked they were. I've been in this industry when listing agents were handing over their listings to anybody that can pay to market them. It's a buyer's market, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have the money. And you're thinking money. Well, we used to have, I don't know, this stuff called, it was, what was it, Tony? You might be still in the Marines. I don't know. It was called,
I don't know, Rick. What was it?
what was I talking about? Does anybody know? Does anybody listen?
Paid marketing. Paid marketing.
Yeah, we had this thing called print. Brint. And it was wild. I mean, you would take pictures and put them in there and write ads and people would come to town. I think it was before the internet. But it was print advertising. And it was in that time, agents couldn't afford to pay to advertise and market. So be that one that's there, be that one that's hungry, be getting after it. Cancels, I'm gonna work like a hawk because I know it was your fault that it didn't sell. I don't believe that it was your fault, but I think the client will more times than not. When I go to work these statuses, I say if I have 10 agents sitting at a table and I said, hey, let's go get this expired, 7 of y'all, 6, 7 of us are gonna mail a postcard, a letter. It's really cool. I get to send you a letter with my picture up on one of the sides and I'm giving you this number. I call it the realtor nod. I say, commissions. I don't know what that means. It looks nice, but what do you take from that? I don't know. Where's the hook? Why do you think the majority are going to mail when they're trying to reach out to these expires for sales and cancel? Why? Yeah, fear of rejection. I was that guy. I was that kid in 3rd grade that wrote a note and said, will you go with me? Circle 1, yes or no. I see some laughers in here. I know y'all were part of it. You were on one side of it or the other, but fear of rejection. Okay. Now, out of those 6 or 7, I'm going to have 2 or 3 that are going to somehow find a number of different things that you can do to find the numbers, and you're going to call. I like that better than mailing. You're probably going to get some voicemails. People are just serial call screeners now. I don't know that number. Maybe so I don't know. Maybe that'll work for you. In my experience, 1 or 2 are going to get off their butt, go out there and knock on that door. And brother and sister, that is me. I'm the door knocker. I'm not going to knock 40 doors a day, but I'm going to knock that door. Because when I have an opportunity to stand in front of you, Brian, and say, hey, Rick Carr, eXp Realty, I saw this thing just came back on the market. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. And say, hey, if you're still ready to sell, I am too. I'm here. Powerful. I was working the other day, had my headset on in the broker room, and I had to pull my home. The end of the story for the home that I got under contract is that the buyers did all kinds of inspections, and they came back and asked me, they said, can we perform a static test, hydrostatic test? And I said, yeah, because I know that being a broker, being principal coupled with an interest, agency coupled with an interest, being a principal in that transaction, I've got a target on my back. So if an inspection you want to do, I'm going to allow it. I don't want to be hammered 2 years when I go down the road, accused by somebody that I knew of a defect that I didn't know of. Did the test? Slatly. Oof, oh, that's what I said. Kind of. So I pulled the home off the market. We're repairing the Slatly. 14,000, something like that. Not a lot of money. Great stuff. It's been a great day. I just got that bill yesterday. We're told that estimated. And if you ever fix the Slatly, you know that that's not a given. It could be more. But I pulled my home off the market to refresh the DON. Figure I'm going to be 30 days. I don't want to go back on market. I want to refresh. I want to look new. I was in the business when we could refresh in 5 days. And I would refresh as a strategy. And I knew that I was going to catch you, my peer, that you might not be as informed as you should be. And then you're going to walk out there and you're going to have your MLS listing and you're going to say, okay, folks, this one's been on the market 2 days. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it sure has. Okay. Look at the history. All they had to do even then was click a tab to look at the history. So I'm refreshing the DON. I got a letter and I had one door knocker. I wish I'd had an opportunity. I was on a call to go talk to that agent that door knocked. She was a top producing agent. My wife talked to her. My 30-year background in mortgage and title. And the lady said she built her business off of prospecting, cancels, and expires. So you may not be at that place in your business, but if you got some new baby agents, I'm telling you where to go. I'm gonna point the pond where you need to be fishing, where you need to be dropping that line. And then I'm gonna show you. I'm a trainer at heart. I'm gonna teach, I'm gonna explain, I'm gonna show you, and then you show me. You make an impact like that in somebody's life, they're gonna remember you for a good part of it. Here 28 years later, like I said, it's the really coolest part of my job, to have somebody that had success come back to me. At that door knock, I'll have listing agreement ready to go. I'll have everything ready, but my goal there really isn't to get that listing that day. I'm not gonna tell you no, and I'm ready to strike. But keep in mind, you're probably catching somebody who just got home from work. I don't know what kind of day they've had. They're probably not stoked, their house didn't sell. Whatever the situation is, they probably weren't planning for me to come solicit for business. What I want to do is make that introduction. Brooks, Rick Carr, EXP. Thank you. Hey, I know I'm catching you off guard here. I work expires, I work cancels. I have 60 to choose from in any given day, and I only visit one. And brother, you're the one today. Catch this. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't think I could sell your home. By the way, did I mention I'm 100% commission? Don't get the property sold, I don't earn a commission. Now, I know I have some people saying, oh, terminations and, hey, breach of contracts and all that. I'll let y'all have that. I never helped somebody seek the fire that didn't want to do business with me. Life's too short. I have 99 people think I walk on water and one of them think I float. And I'm thinking about that one every day. You're bringing me down. Character flaw, I don't know what, but I focus on the one that's unhappy and the other 99 are just the way I expect them to be. Yes, sir.
Rick, have you ever put a cancellation fee in your contract?
Never. Never cancellation, never termination, never whatever. Hey, if we're that far off and you're ready to walk, I'm gonna let you out. It's really interesting, when I go to list, and I would say, here's the deal, here's the agreement, here's where we're at, and hey, if something happens, I'd get those, well, we'll give you 30 days. And I'd say, no, you won't. I'm not interested. My print advertising won't even roll out by 30 days, but I'll have to pay for it and order it. And it'll be coming out helping Tucker sell the property if you can me in 30 days. So I don't take 30 days. Not interested. A different time there. Termination fees. Yeah. So, my deal is good riddance. We're done on that one. Negative energy. I'm a big believer, and it took me a lot of years to get here in energy. And negative energy, I'm out. I'm gonna go take care of the others that want to do business with me or happy to have it. Now, do I think any less of you if you write those fees in? I don't. You better have them prearranged. And what do you do if they don't pay? We'll tell you as a policy, EXP doesn't seek suits for commission. You ever seen somebody seek a suit for commission? Sean, you ever seen somebody seek a suit for commission?
10 years, probably had 3 people.
Wow. Any luck? Or I'm sure it was more than luck, I'm sorry. Anything favorable to the agents? Did they get paid?
It's generally been pretty favorable.
Okay.
But the conversations we always have are from a business side of things. This doesn't, you have the law here, you have the business side. Do you really want to go and enforce this?
Yeah.
And run your name out? It's just
Yeah.
a bad business. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I probably get 15, 20 calls a month.
Yes, because they owe me a commission.
And then they end up choosing not to, which I think is the right decision.
I think so more times than not. I'm sure there's time and places, and I know, let me rephrase, I know there are. And what I used to tell my sellers when I would talk to them about letting them out of listing, if you're unhappy, hey, if you're unhappy, I have a 3-step process. 1, give me an opportunity to correct it. What I've learned as a consumer, it's not the mistake that's made in business more times than not, it's how it's addressed that makes a difference. Because mistakes are gonna happen in your business, they're gonna happen in my business, they're gonna happen in everybody's business. It's how it's made right that makes a difference to the consumer. So number 1, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want an opportunity to correct it. Step number 2, if I'm unable to correct the issue, I want my broker to have an opportunity to come in and have a discussion with you and correct the issue. Maybe the broker reassigns. Maybe the broker comes to me and says, hey, Rick, you're about to get 100% of nothing. How about a little of something? That's cool, we used to say in the country. A little something's more than a lot of nothing, right? And the broker has a vested interest in treating the client the way they need to be treated, placing the client in a fiduciary position here, placing your needs above everybody else's in the transaction, to include my own. And the broker has an obligation or vested interest in protecting the company's reputation. Because when somebody throws me under the bus, they rarely just say Red Car. It's EXP. Yeah, those EXP agents, you gotta watch them. Now, was it the EXP agents or was it one that didn't handle business? So that was my step 2. And the third step was if neither step 1 and step 2 don't work, you're out. Bye-bye. Okay? Now, I can act big and bad when I'm a W-2 employee, about firing people or letting people go. And I like to say that in my business, there have been less than 5 people that I've fired. Why? Because I'm not easily offended when I'm earning a commission. It takes a lot. But I have had 3, 4, 5 where I've said, we're done here. Life's too short. And I'm sure you'll have those as well. So understand that on those cancels. You need to be working hard, understanding that chances are they're bugged about the way things went. The chances are it's the agent's fault.
So in our, what I've experienced in our MLS, and I call expires, but a lot of brokerages aren't releasing those listings. They're putting them on hold, even though they're truly canceled. So they wind up on the expired list is where I'm going with that. I talked to one Monday that said, oh, well, we canceled 3 months ago because we decided to Airbnb it.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of those cancels in our MLS are actually going to expired rather than.
Okay, well, I want to tell you this, only brokers have the ability, only broker level, MLS has the ability to cancel a listing, none of you do. If you're associated with EXP, whose listing is that? The brokers. I know y'all work hard for it, but it's the broker's listing. I've been at it long enough to see agents try to come in, they call all their clients the night before, and they walk in and tell the broker the next morning, I'm out of here. And what they're trying to do is terminate those. The access was pulled years, and it's never been a part of access in the 28 years I've been in the business. So I venture to say, in part, that's why. So I'll see agents make a mistake, and the clients never know that their property is still on hold status because they think hold means canceled. It doesn't. What usually prompts that? When agent B comes in and calls agent A and says, hey, you need to terminate this listing. Client showed me a signed termination from 3 months ago, and I think it'd probably be best for you to get with your broker and talk about making that happen. I'm not gonna tell you the truth. I just did kind of, but I'm gonna push you back to your broker. There's a question up here a minute ago. Green shirt.
Going back to when you were talking about the calls, you not knowing screening calls. I have had agents before where we'll have a training class and someone will say, send a text message, send your photo, send a video message.
These are agents saying that,
Right.
yeah, cold call?
What do you think about that idea?
And I love it. I think it's creative. I think this industry often rewards people that blaze their own trail and go a different path than everybody else is going.
Right.
Keep sending your letters, please, because I'm gonna go out and door knock. You're never gonna know if they got the letter, but I'm gonna know where they stand. And I'm telling you, my odds of selling you on me are way better when I'm standing in front of you. You get a better feel for who I am than looking at my picture. What did you think about my picture a while ago? I hope it was good, I don't know, but better or worse, now you have a better feel for how I roll or what I bring to the table. And again, I told you in that appointment, I just want a quick boom, hey, Rick Carr, EXP Realty, brother, I see you canceled. Understand things happen, may have had a change of plans, whatever. I go through 60 of these a day. I drive by 1 per day. You're my one. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't think I could sell your home. I wouldn't be here today. By the way, did I mention I'm 100% commissioned? I only get paid when the job's done. My wife's been a neurologist trying to fix her headaches, 6 of them for 10 years. None of them have done it, but they've all been paid along the way. We're in a different industry. We're in a much different industry. I believe in guarding those commissions. Yes, sir.
Rick, I may have missed it, but when you call these expires, is there some sort of preface or comment about trying to confirm that in fact that has been canceled? Because it plays into your second point, which where I come in as an attorney, I get a little bit concerned when people call, is you don't want tortious interference with contractual right? So that second where you said, well, hey, where the agent calls are trying to get EXP to terminate the listing, that's already tortious interference, right? So just want to be sure that if they're canceled, they for sure cancel the MLS.
If they're canceled, brother, they are canceled. That agreement is terminated. There's absolutely no ambiguity, yeah, that, in a canceled listing. But please, that no means is a pass to say, are you working with another agent? Rick Carp, EXP, are you working with another agent? I mean, that's always just good business, right? First of all, I don't want to waste my time.
Right.
Second of all, I want to treat you, my peers, the way I would want to be treated if the shoe were on the other foot. Believe it or not, there are people out there that actively engage in soliciting business, even when it's done, it's a bummer. There was another question, right? Was there? No? Okay, moving along. So that's kind of it on my for sale, by owner, expired, canceled. Any questions on that? I hope you're doing it. At least write the letter. I don't know. Let me know if it works for you. It has never worked for me. Some of it's just in familiarity and or name recognition. And or you see me, you see my sign here, you see my billboard there, you see my bus stop picture here, and then you see a letter from me. I mean, that's okay. But I'm telling you, while you're writing your letter, I'm getting my car on the way out there. Talk to a kid, brand new agent. The company wants us to call all new agents when they hire. If you didn't know now, and that is huge. It wasn't this way at EXP when I started. Leadership has instructed all of us, all 10 of your brokers are dialing for dollars every day we're working for the company. Half of the 10 of us are doing that. The other half are pulling duty. But on days we're not pulling duty, we're calling. We're a virtual company. Why are we calling? Well, if you're a new licensee, new to the business, don't have a sponsor, haven't been assigned a mentor, that's the perfect storm. 30, 60, 90 days, we see fallout. So leadership has come down and said, brokers, you will be calling on the 25th day, the 55th day, and the 85th day, coinciding with our NPS too, right? So we're doing something that was, I never thought EXP would do because we're a virtual company. When I was hired, it was a completely different team. There's not another member of the old broker team that was here when I got here that's still here today. I'm the last one standing. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm here. And it's good, obviously. Questions, comments, expireds, cancels, let's move on. I've got just a minute or two, right? I think we're starting to run over. I submitted my slides to the big boss yesterday and he said, 5 slides? Are you gonna have enough content? I said, man, when I taught for champions, I used to teach 10 hours, and 10. Back when a 30-hour course was actually taught over 30 hours. It was just really cool philosophy. I mean, a mindset. I've never seen it before. It's just amazing. So I could go all day. I don't stop until I lose my license. Lastly, let's talk about until I lose my audience, rather, or license, I guess. Referrals. When I sold, I was too good to take referrals. Now, I got a lot of people, my past clients, 30% of my business, 3 in 10 came from past clients. When I say I'm number one, when my clients say Rick's number one, it holds a lot of weight. We've been told for years in the business community, your clients are more likely to talk about a negative experience than a positive one. I say that's passé. That's 90s. That's like early 2000s. I say the level of service we get now is so mediocre that when somebody stands up and kills it, people go out of their way to tell you about it. You know, you have to agree. You've seen painters, you've seen people, contractors, vendors, stores, companies, dealerships, whatever, that have done the right thing, and people go out of their way to tell people, hey, you should talk to my agent. He's pretty good. And 30% of my business was that way. So, like I said, I can say I'm number one, but my clients say it. That's a good day at the office for me.
And ask for them.
What's that?
And ask for them.
And ask for them. What do you mean?
Ask for referrals.
Ask for the referrals. I left business. Thank you so much. I had to have left business on the table. I know I did when I was a listing agent, because I never asked people where they were going. I mean, if they were going somewhere local, I got their business. You know, believe it or not, I thought in my own mind that I was being, I don't know, greedy or whatever. The problem was I didn't have confidence in myself and or my ability. And what was I selling? In my mind, I was selling nothing but trying to get another piece of the pie, of somebody else's pie now when you're going to Nebraska. But if you really feel that you have a service to offer and you're confident, when you present that, it can happen. So thank you, Tucker. Appreciate that. That was something that was if I could go back and do the early on business, it would be to talk about, you're the professional. I don't have a license in Nebraska, but I speak real estate fluently, right? I don't know Nebraska contracts. I don't know Nebraska trends or markets, but I sure do speak the language of real estate. And I can work with you there. So please do that. Yes.
And another thing, referrals don't necessarily need to be 25%.
Oh, not at all.
If you bring more to the table, you can ask for more and just say, I'm not licensed in Oklahoma, you know?
Agents and referral sources and reloads want you that are in this room.
Yeah.
They'll take the new agents. They'll take the babies. There's nobody left. Or if they're quick to the draw, but they really want you. They want a seasoned pro. What do you tell somebody on the originating end? I'll get you a good agent. I hope you're able to do that if you say that. But they want you in this room. Build a system. In your business planning. I didn't do any referrals last year. When I would run an office, if somebody came into my office referral heavy, and we want to talk about increasing their bottom dollar, the best thing for me to do is to get you off of referral business and have you go getting your own. But if you're getting started and or it's just a small piece of the pie of your overall business planning, I think it can work for you. Because again, they want your seasoned agents. They want your top producers. Don't always get them. Why? Because we don't want somebody to take 25, 30, 38% off the top. But here's something that I really want to share with you and that I realized in my business as well when I sold, and that's that when I sell you, anybody ever bought a car from Sewell? Sewell's tagline is customers for life. And the first car I bought was probably a $10,000, $15,000 car for my daughter, and they treated me like I was buying a $100,000 Infiniti. They didn't know how to dumb down their service. They didn't know how to treat me as less than somebody else spending that $100K. And from the very first person that I saw when I walked in that dealer, all the way to the end when I walked out, they all had the same mission and goal, and that's clients for life. And when you do business with me, folks, my goal is to make you a client for life. And I know in doing so, when your friends and your family and your coworkers and your church buddies and your whatever else, you're going to talk about me. So I want you to really focus in on that customer for life. And oh, by the way, how much of a referral do I pay? If the buyer comes to me at a 38% Op City, 35% Op City referral, I take it, our team takes it, whatever the situation is, I get out there, get it done selling the home. What about when they go to sell in 3 or 4 years? I'm not paying any referral on that. What about when they tell their friends and family about me? I'm not paying any referral on that. So folks, if you're looking for a way to build your business at a time when others are leaving, go back to the basics. Go back to what made you who you are today. Don't forsake it. Bring the new babies along. You've got some new babies. Maybe your time you don't allow for all of this prospecting. Get them started that way. And I'm telling you, when you change somebody's life, when you lead them, you know, one of my favorite pastors used to say, I'm just one beggar telling another beggar where I got food. And I think that real estate's the same way. You know, I'm somebody that's been there and I'm just telling you, hey, this was successful for me. So that's it. I've got one more thing I'm going to share with you and we're done. Yes, sir.
Just a question on referral sources. So I know EXP has Rock City, and they just announced a Realty.com partnership. What is the relationship with EXP and those referrals? How do us as team leaders help our team get more up?
Well, it's all going through RevNotes now, isn't it, Tony? All starting to go through RevNotes. And I need to be coached up a little bit more on that. That was rolled out at convention, and I understand it and understand what they're doing. Get your certification would be my recommendation. Anything you wanted to add there, boss?
Yeah.
Which certification?
Yeah.
Your reload.
Yeah, so all of them run through RevNotes. So that's going to be Affinity, that's going to be Express Offers, that's going to be REO department, that's going to be Reload department, that's going to be, there's something I'm forgetting in there. But essentially all, and the newest Realty.com partnership as well. So all those sort of platforms are running through there. There's also a ton of other, of course, Zillow, Flex, and stuff like that. OpCity is another one. OpCity's not running through Revenos, that's a separate one. But there's Redfin. I mean, there's so many of these different lead providers that are out there. And to Rick's point, that's just the entry fee. Right, that's a lot of times agents get really hung up on. Oh my gosh, if I do Revenos or if I do Reload, I'm looking at 40% or whatever it is. Okay, yeah, that's on that first transaction. But once you can tap into the network, if you're running a true business and a true referrals-based business, it's a non-factor, right? When you're sitting at the closing table and you're asking the right questions, hey, who do you know that's looking to buy or sell? To Rick's point, all those are free, right? So same thing, when you're asking for a video testimonial, that's something that I highly recommend. If you're not doing that, you're sitting at that closing table, say, hey, can I shoot just a quick 5-minute testimonial video? Hear what you felt about this experience. Now that goes on your website and you can use that forever, right? And then another cool one I actually just heard about yesterday, doing some other training. Don't just take their friends and family's name and number down. Take a selfie with them and then send that to the friend or family. Right? Take a selfie with them and say, hey, I'm here at the closing. I'm here at the closing table with Janie. We're talking about you. I understand that you're looking to buy or sell it here in the near future. Happy to help you with that. When can we get together? When can I buy you a cup of coffee? Right? Do those sorts of things, and you will see this business skyrocket. Yeah, maybe it costs you 30%, maybe it costs you 40%, but it's well worth it because it's 150% more than it is the 50.
I love it. Thank you, sir. No, I love that.
Is that for me or Rick?
That's for you, yeah.
Sure.
So this room can feel my pain on this. So we're talking referrals. And I know it's higher up the chain than you guys, but you start somewhere. When I send a referral out to another EXP agent, because that's, I'm a company guy, I've actually got a tattoo. That being said.
Do you really? Because I need to see that.
I'll show it, yeah.
Oh, wait, never mind. Okay, gotcha. All right.
No, it's actually, so anyway, so I send a referral to another EXP agent. I'm capped. I charge a 30%, 25%, whatever. It only hits my deal count.
25% error.
Yeah, 25% of the 250. So from an Icon standpoint, it doesn't benefit me as much as I send it outside.
$15 or more, it does count.
No, it does not.
Does not.
Good question. I can find that out.
No, it does not. I can guarantee you it does not. We
Yeah.
sent a $600,000 deal to Ohio, and it was 30% of 250.
Yeah.
It hit our
Bank account.
our transfer account at $70. Transaction count at $70. I need 5,000 to Icon.
Right.
So if you're running close, it kind of hoodwinks you. So
yeah,
I'd like to see that change where it's at least an option to the agent to go ahead and pay the $250.
I think, can't you appeal something when you're that close?
You certainly can. That doesn't come to me, unfortunately.
Right.
I say yes to everything,
Right.
but that goes to our Icon program, which is probably why they don't send it to me, because I'd be like, yeah. So that goes to the Icon program, and I can certainly roll that feedback in there for sure.
So,
And I know you could, and I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
running rocks.
No, we're happy to talk about that. Yeah, take it offline and
Yeah.
definitely let's roll through that because hey, this company listens. They listen to your surveys. If you're not filling out your surveys, I want to kick you in the rump before you leave the room. Please just line up here at the door. I'm going to kick you in the rump. Mr. Glenn Sanford, we as a group, we live and die by these surveys. There are times when people will say, hey, Rick, you did a great job. Thank you. I want to tell somebody. Well, you can put it in the NPS. You can tell them. But also, we need to know when we're not doing a great job. This company just doesn't have to take those surveys and let them stack up. I mean, we'll go over this as a team with comments that are made in the NPSs about what brokers did or what they didn't do. And we go a step further and we call you. So if you're not nice on those surveys, you're going to get a call. So at least be as ugly as you were when we call. Don't downplay it when we call. No, I'm saying it's few, but we have 9,000 agents. We're hearing you, and this is one of those cases. Thank you.
Yes, sir, just had one last thing on that. So I'm on the Agent Advisory Council. There's 12 of us for that company. Leadership is well aware of that concern. So,
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
No, and leadership's great.
Of course they are.
So getting back to referrals to get more business.
Yes, sir.
So I'm listed heavy, that's as in,
Uh-huh.
I won't say numbers, but I worked with 0 buyers last year.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we go through every year, we take all the HUD statements,
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, settlement statements.
Yeah.
Old school.
Me too.
And we send them back to the buyers who bought our properties. And we take all that information, and we import back in our CRM, and we adopt them.
Okay.
So,
Love it.
you know, obviously, they're not gonna buy right now.
Right.
Right, they just bought.
Right.
But it's an opportunity to introduce yourselves and also ask for if there's anything they can do, if you know anybody that's looking to make a life change. Instead of asking for referrals, by the way, ask if they know anybody that's looking to make a life change.
Yeah.
Right? And that's another way to start generating more business, not just necessarily right this moment.
Yes.
But it builds future.
I need to eat next year. I need
So
to
it
eat in
builds
3
that
years.
SOI.
I'm gonna plant the seeds.
Seeing over the year.
Man, I love that. And that's what I think these events should be, and that's why I want you to continue to return, is you're getting some nuggets. I mean, Jason shared, and I've seen a few agents pick up a pen and start to write. That might be the one good idea you get today. And I think that you've got a lot of them come out. And I want to tell you something that worked for me on my sphere of influence. Let me be your real estate resource. And that goes back to a time when we didn't have internet. I'm sorry. I mean, it wasn't in use the way that it is now. And people would call me and say, Rick, just saw the house down the street was listed. What's the price? Oh, I'm gonna answer that question for you. Things that don't always equal $1 in my pocket. Hey, so-and-so said this and that, what do you think? Because I know if you're starting to come to me to ask those questions, where are you going when it's time to sell? Where are you going when it's time to buy? So I was a tagline I used in my business early on, let me be your real estate resource. Sean said something about being a resource earlier. Let me be your real estate resource. I want you to bring the silly questions to me, the ones you might think are dumb or whatever. Bring them all to me. Okay, let me be your real estate resource. I want to share this with you, and then I've got to cut it off here. I've ran over a little bit. As I said, I could go all day, but I want you to hear this. Anybody TikTok? Okay, everybody's chuckling. My kid does. Well, this kid does as well. It's like America's Funniest Home Videos to me in my head. I can sit there and laugh. I'm going to show you a TikTok. And there's some cool. I've got the Broker Minute on TikTok. That's one of my handles where I go through and I'm just in a ball cap backwards. And I'm telling you how it is. So maybe visit that. But here we go. I want to make sure you can hear this. This is incredible. And this is about contacting farming or working a group. And we make sure.
So there was a group of people that did this research project where they chose a community of homes. They went to this community, they knocked on every home, talked to every homeowner, and asked them the question, who's the #1 real estate agent here? And after they got through, they had a myriad of different answers, so it was a bunch of different agents, not one single agent was dominant. They came back and they created a fake real estate agent profile, fake picture, fake contact information, and completed an 8x8 campaign, which is 1 postcard a week for 8 straight weeks to this community. After the 8x8 campaign was complete, they went back to the same community, knocked on the same doors, talked to the same homeowners, asked the same question. Who's the #1 real estate agent in this community? The majority of homeowners chose the fake real estate agent. Think about that for a second. This agent has never sold a home, doesn't even exist, but is being chosen as the #1 real estate agent in that community. Why? Because sometimes it's not about being the best, it's about being the most known.
So Rick,
We used to have there are a couple times, several times in my career where the joke was on me. And this is one of those cases. Gal came in, I lived in a little lake town south of Fort Worth, and she came in, sold a few waterfront properties, new to the market, new to the business, and sold a few waterfront properties, and overnight she became the waterfront expert. And we chuckled. We had a great laugh. The realtor body there, right? Sure she is. A year, 2 max later, she was the #1 agent in town. and she had the #1 share of lakefront properties there. You tell people, they believe it. And this is kind of like that. The #1 agent was a fake agent. But that was one of the times where joke was on me. We got a chuckle, but ultimately the joke was on me as she jumped to the #1 spot in the market. And it's still actively killing it there here 20 plus years later. No, that's fine.
So everybody in this room should know who done that research. Does anybody know who done that research?
Who did this?
No, the research that this guy's talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Created the fake agents.
Uh-huh.
Does anybody know who did that?
It's an NAR.
It's an EXPer.
I'm sure.
Don Hobbs.
It was way over.
Yeah, it was Hobbs and Hurd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dig it.
Larry
Love it.
Larry Kendall actually mentions that in the Ninja Selling.
8 by 8, 8 contacts in 8 weeks. What did I say? Go back to the basics. You're here for a reason. You're going to stay here. You're going to vault ahead. Longevity is the key to this business. I recommend that, unlike me, you have some balance in your life. Work was #1 for me. Above faith, above family, above children, above being a husband, above everything else. And I was monetarily rewarded because of it. But everything else was out of whack. So just encourage you, have some balance, have some procedures, scale up, bring in that team, and go get it done, get back to the basics. Thank you. Yes.
We got away from it, talking about get back to basics, is we used to direct mail in my neighborhood. And we actually had a good ROI on it, but something that I learned from some others is there's 2 different ways you can approach it. Is one, team up with a lender to help split the cost. Now, obviously with that, there's a little more to it because there's compliance. But the easiest thing, and we started doing it now, we're starting to see a little bit of return, is I actually went to Groupon and found businesses that are around where I live that are advertising on Groupon, right? You buy Groupon, you go to business. I called up the owner, I said, hey,